All right, welcome. So, Jeff Bezos has some pretty interesting ideas. For example, he thinks it's way harder to be kind than it is to be clever. Oh, and he's pretty sure we'll have millions of people living in space. So, today, we're going to distill the core lessons on business, technology, and that long term vision he's so famous for, all from a recent conversation with the man himself. Bezos kicks things off with this brilliant little twist on that famous JFK quote. It perfectly sums up what he calls the entrepreneurial delusion. It's that almost irrational optimism you need to even get started on something huge. Okay, so if you need that level of, well, delusion to even begin, what's the next step? Well, his advice really goes against that popular college dropout myth that we hear about all the time. So, this is fascinating. On one side, you have the romantic college dropout story. But Bezos says, look, people like Gates and Zuckerberg, they're the exception, not the rule. His path is actually way more practical. He says go work for a best practices company first. Let them pay you to learn the fundamentals, right? How to hire, how to build processes. You absorb all that, and it dramatically increases your odds of success later on. I mean, he himself was 30 when he started Amazon, and he says that decade of experience was absolutely crucial. This really practical approach to starting a business, it's all built on a much deeper, more personal philosophy. And it's a lesson he didn't learn in a boardroom. He learned it in the backseat of his grandfather's car when he was just a kid. So the story goes like this. He's a smart 10-year-old kid in the car with his grandparents. He hears an ad on the radio, does some quick math in his head about his grandmother's smoking habit, and then he proudly announces his calculation, totally expecting a pat on the back for being so clever. But instead of praise, his grandmother just bursts into tears. His grandfather pulls the car over, and this quiet moment they have would go on to shape Bezos's entire core philosophy for decades to come. Yeah, his grandfather's words really stuck with him. It's harder to be kind than to be clever. And for Bezos, in the world of business, this means that all your clever technology and your brilliant strategy, it's just not enough. Real, lasting success comes from blending that cleverness with kindness. And for him, that translates directly into long-term thinking. So how does he apply this? Through what he calls long-term thinking. It's all about making choices like, say, being willing to lose a sale to keep a customer. This whole mindset forces you to build your strategy not on some fleeting trend, but on the things about your customers that will never, ever change. So what are those stable, unchanging anchors in this crazy, fast-moving world? It's simple. Customer needs. Bezos argues you can build an entire long-lasting strategy around these basic truths. People will always want lower prices. They'll always want faster delivery, more selection, more reliability. I mean, 10 years from now, nobody's going to say, I just love Amazon, but I really wish they deliver my stuff a little bit slower. It's just not going to happen. And this whole idea is captured perfectly in his famous mantra. The vision, that's serving those core customer needs, that's the anchor you hold on to. But the details, the technology, the tactics, that stuff has to be flexible. For Amazon, the vision of fast delivery has been constant, but the details have evolved like crazy, from warehouses and trucks all the way to drones and AI-powered logistics. And this exact philosophy, this focus on the long term, it was put to the ultimate test during one of the biggest tech upheavals in modern history, the dot-com bust. I mean, just look at these numbers. They're staggering. Amazon stock peaked at $113, and then it just cratered to $6 a share. From the outside, it looked like an absolute catastrophe. But inside Amazon, Bezos was focused on a completely different set of metrics. And see, this is the key. While the stock price was just in total freefall, the actual business fundamentals, the important stuff, it was all steadily growing. He totally ignored the market's panic because his own internal data told him the company was actually getting stronger. The lesson is crystal clear. You have to focus on building real value, not on what he calls the short-term voting machine of Wall Street. He applies this exact same thinking to the current AI hype, and he makes this really fascinating distinction between two types of bubbles. You have financial bubbles like the 2008 crisis, which just leave behind a trail of damage. But then you have industrial bubbles like the dot-com era or today's AI boom. Now, these are different. Even though a ton of companies fail, the overinvestment leaves behind incredibly valuable stuff, like all that fiber optic cable that society ultimately benefits from in a huge way. This leads to a really crucial insight about where AI is heading. Bezos doesn't see it as just some standalone industry. He sees it as a horizontal enabling layer, kind of like electricity or the internet. The point is, it won't just create a few new AI companies. It's going to be woven into the fabric of every single industry, fundamentally reinventing how they all operate. So, this focus on building these foundational layers for the future, first the internet, now AI, it finds its ultimate expression in his most ambitious project of all, creating the infrastructure for humanity to expand out into space. He sees the moon as this incredible strategic gift. And the reason is just simple physics. Because it has such low gravity, launching something from the moon's surface takes 30 times less energy than launching it from Earth. That, he believes, makes it the essential gas station and launch pad for the rest of our solar system. And this isn't just about, exploration. He actually predicts that within the next 10 to 20 years, it's going to become more cost-effective to build gigantic data centers and manufacturing plants in space where they can be powered 24/7 by the sun, with no clouds or weather getting in the way. And listen, this isn't some distant sci-fi fantasy to him. He genuinely predicts that we will see millions of people living and working in space within our lifetimes. For Bezos, this isn't some weird anomaly. It's just the next logical step in the technological acceleration that has defined all of human history. So from the delusion you need to get started to a vision that literally reaches for the stars, the common thread in Bezos' whole philosophy is this relentless drive to build for tomorrow. He argues that every single generation contributes something to what he calls our shared civilizational abundance, which, leaves us with a pretty big final question. What will our contribution be?